Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining um, the Go Educate Inc. and the Nigerian American Football Association and our coaching training session. This is week number 4. That means we're almost finished. We're close. We're at our final lap. So this is really good. Once again, we want to thank you all for your commitment and dedication to expanding the game of American football throughout Nigeria, as well as throughout the continent of Africa. We really appreciate everything that you all have done and how you have stuck with this. And as I stated before, I mean, what you all are doing is admirable because you're doing something that's going to provide opportunities and hope to the many students, to the many kids, many families, many communities all throughout your country. So thank you all for taking this time to join us. So today we're going to actually go over chapters 12 through 14. We're going to have our guest Jesse Hall continue on from, the great facilitation he's been doing. This is something he loves. This is something that he knows a lot about, and so we're happy that you all giving us this opportunity to share, for Jesse to share that information and pass it on to you all. But before we give it to Jesse, I want to actually just turn this over to Coach Lawrence. Coach Lawrence, is there anything you'd like to say?
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you all for coming in this far. This is our final week. No, next week is our final week. So this is for final week 4 coaching session. Now, after the final week, I know we have a few courses to cover for the reference section, which Jesse we talked about, and I'm sure that's not going to take time at all before the exam will come. However, not many of us who started are still here, but a lot of us are still here. So I want to congratulate those who are making it through to the end. Those who make it through the end are true victorious ones. And for you to be a victorious one, it means that the expansion of football in Nigeria will have your name in history as being the first certified set of officials, and that's a good step ahead for progress individually and also for the nation. So I want to thank you all for taking it this far. And I want to say we have much to cover today. This is because we want to make sure we finish this first stage by next week. So we have much to cover today, and please stay tuned. And God bless you all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Coach Lawrence. Thank you so much. Now we're going to pass this on to Jesse Hall. Jesse, I'll be sharing my screen, and you just let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead now. Share the screen, please. Again, good evening to everyone, and thank you again for being with us. We're going to try to get through this in about 45 to 50 minutes. If you have questions, send them through the chat line. We'll pause and go through those questions and make sure that there's a clear understanding as to what we're trying to do. Yesterday, we talked about managing time, and so now we're moving on to the next session, chapters 12, 13, and 14. And as you see, the chapter 12 is titled Being an Effective Communicator. And there's a saying there by one of the coaches that coached at both Notre Dame and University of Arkansas, along with University of North Carolina here in the States. And that's former coach Lou Holtz. And he said, when all is said and done, more said than done. And basically what I take from that is that, the more said is done. But what I take from that is, as I reviewed this today, is it's all about how we communicate to people and that they understand what it is we're trying to say to them. And so it's just a process, and there's no set formula or figure that will tell you that it has to be done this way. Unfortunately, this is one of those areas where you might see that it's done more with what we call trial and error. You know, you will discover real fast what will work and what will not work. So Jeffrey, go ahead and once I give you my little thumbs up, move it on to the next screen, which will be screen number 4. Being an effective um, communicator. And there's about 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets on this particular page that I want to talk about. And the first one deals with you need to be able to um, practice of your skillful communication. A successful um, communicator learns how to master this particular skill. As I said, there's no really written formula other than the fact that sometimes it's all done by trial and error. But the thing that you need to probably understand more so than anything else is that it's all about the way people, when they hear what you say, it's important also how you say what it is you want them to hear what you say. Because if you come off as an arrogant individual, right away you may get into a situation where they're just thinking, well, that's not the way I would do it, and you're probably right when you think that. But at the same time, when the shoe's on the other foot, if you're doing it, you want to make sure that what you're doing is being perceived by the individuals in a way that you, the speaker, would also appreciate. The second step here talks in this second one where it talks about a coach is considerably less likely to prevail. The most important part there is all concerned parties must understand what you're saying. If they can't understand what it is you're saying, then there's no way it's probably going to become very effective. Um, for example, I've learned a lot just doing this particular session and sessions here this year because people have just said to me, you need to speak slower. You need to make sure that this screen that we're showing stays up longer so that you can write it and that you can let your mind absorb along with your eyes see so that you can put it together in your own way. So that has helped me to say, I need to get back and I need to look at what it is I'm doing, go over it multiple times to make sure that what's coming out is the way that you want it to come out so that individuals can understand what it is you're trying to say to them. And all I'm trying to say to you all is this right here. You're going to have to practice on your own to be able to become one who can communicate to both players, coaches, parents, and in some cases, news media, and that's where all the others that might come in. Because if they don't understand what it is you're trying to say, as you'll see as we go through this, then you're not being very effective as the communicator that I think most of you really want to become. And then the final two here are that it's more verbal. There are many dimensions, but then they don't all have to be verbal. There are things that come up that sometimes you have to write it. Sometimes you have to video it. And I mean, with our society being what it is now, there are just all sorts of ways that that we actually communicate to others so that so that we understand that they have more than one avenue other than just listening to what I have to say. And then the final part on this third one here says, the more a coach can master each of these dimensions, the greater chances for your success will be in your favor. So, and then finally, as I said earlier, there is no checklist that says you have to take steps 1 through 10 in order to be a successful communicator. This next diagram, go ahead, Jeff, to that diagram 12 on the next page that we want to review. Here are the many different ways that I briefly touched on, but I'll go into a little bit more detail as we go through these. The verbal, the telephone, the presentation, the listening, the writing, electronic messaging, and then also what we call non-verbal. And there are definitions that will come over as we, well, this next page is going to be blank, Jeff, so go by it. Hold on, go to the one where it says lots of practice communicating. Go, are you on page 7? Okay, well maybe yours was taken out. The first one should say lots of practice. Go back one more, Jeff. You're on the right one then. Go back. You need lots of practice in your communicating. There were times when I would actually get in the mirror and just start talking to myself, and it looks kind of crazy at first because you're talking to yourself, but then I would say to myself, what did I just say? How did that come out? Did I really get across what I was trying to get across so that somebody else would understand what I was trying to say? And so there are lots of ways that you can work on that skill while you're at home. And then also, I had to understand and know my audience. Being a fella from the South here in the States, I mean, I grew up in South Florida, and I'll be honest with you, the very first time that I had to go against to actually speak to a predominantly, no, it wasn't predominantly, it was an all male Caucasian or white group that I was speaking to. It was during one of my church engagements, and matter of fact, it was Dan Snell that actually took me to this group, this men's group, and I had an opportunity to speak to them. But the thing that I did over and over again, I kept looking into the mirror and saying to myself, you can do this. Just go out and share from your heart and let people know that you can actually communicate in such a way that not just people that look like me could understand what I was trying to say, but there were others that could also understand exactly as to what I was talking about. And then the third one on that page, again, not too fast, not too slow. Evaluate and review everything that you do so that, again, you can help master this by doing it in a way that will help you to become the speaker that you want to become. And then finally, I think it talks in there about the videotape. Just before we go over to the next page, videotape, you can record, but take the time to listen. And if you're a married guy and married man and you go back home and then you ask your spouse to help you to become effective in that area, I know my wife has been one of my better teachers over all of the years of just having the opportunity to go out and actually speak, because she has said to me, I don't know anything that you're talking about. And I would say, well, what do you mean? She says, well, I don't know. You're the one doing the talking. You tell me. And so that, for me, was very helpful to hear from her that she didn't understand what I was trying to say. So I went back, and that's why I like to, before I really have an opportunity to come on live like we are now, I want to make sure that what I'm saying at least makes sense. Yeah, there are times you get a little bit nervous when you have to go back to your notes and then things don't come out the way you want them to come out. Try to maintain your calmness and your composure and just move on to the points that you want to make, because this is something that as you go through it, you will begin to understand more and more that it's important that people understand what you're trying to say, and they can kind of sort of feel it and know that as you're going through that process, yeah, this person or that guy or that young lady really understands how to communicate so that we can understand what it is he's trying to say to us. Parents sometimes feel the same way along with your colleagues that you might be working with. So again, it is important that you just take your time and do the very best that you can in letting the people understand and know that this is something that you can do. But it will take practice, and it may take a lot more practice than what you want, but that part is up to you. Make sure that they understand it to the point to where they can dissect it and then kind of chew on it a little bit, swallow it, but yet at the same time still understand it. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff, to the next piece. these last, okay, we're at the mosaic effective part of communication. And there, what I got from that is there are lots of opinions on the effectiveness about how one needs to do it. However, as I stated earlier, there is no written recipe that say that you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a whole lot of that and a whole lot of this. No, it just simply means you have to go back again and put this piece together so that as you're doing it for whether it's talking to your young kids for the very first time, whether it's talking to parents, your administrators, or news media, it really doesn't matter. You have to be able to deal with them, and then there will be things that will come up as we go along here, and then you will be able to see that as long as you're able to convey or people understand what it is you're trying to say as you go through the process, then at that point you are effective when it comes to being able to have people to understand what it is you want them to understand. Let me just give you an example from my time, from some of my time just being on my former job, and that was being able to communicate to both students, parents, administrators, teachers, bus drivers, whomever, because I was the behavior specialist in my building, and so I dealt with every aspect of the individuals that were within that school. So what and all I'm saying is that you have to make sure that when students or parents or others are involved, you have to give them the same respect. And we'll go into greater detail as we get to that particular session today. But I just want to mention that right now, you have to give them the same respect, and then that you would want somebody to give you if the shoe was on the other foot. Basically saying that, you know what? When people come in and they criticize what you do, don't take it personally. Just say to yourself, well, wait a minute. What did I say or how did I say it to get us to the point to where I'm going to the right and they're going to the left, and unfortunately we're walking side by side and we're not going to meet on this particular issue. We need to be, or the speaker themselves need to be able to turn that around and say, oh, well, wait, hold. Let's back up and let's see if we can't resolve this situation right now. Please tell me what it is you need to tell me. And I had to do that with students, sometimes as young as 11 or 12 years old. I heard over and over again from students, well, you just don't understand me. And it was at that point I would say, okay, help me to understand you. And I had to just shut it up and listen to what they had to say. And then I could come back and say, okay, now you've had your piece. I need to get the other side because I need to find out from them what they have to say. And then at the end, and again, I wanted to make sure that as I went through where my problem was, that I understood pretty much from both sides what their individual side was so that we could go on. Go ahead, Jeff, to the next session, next page there. Different types of skills. The verbal. The verbal is one that you just kind of get to the point. Don't beat around the bush. If it means that, I have to say, well, wait, hold on. Both of you guys are wrong. Not, well, no, I think you're okay here, you're over there. No, hold it. We had an argument. Both people are wrong. Then we go, and then we try and find out what it is we need to do so that we can resolve whatever that problem is. The next method with the telephone. With the telephone, remember, we're calling it into somebody's home, and so it may or may not be a good time. And so you want to basically have their permission to talk to them in their home on the telephone. Well, so again, get to the point. Make sure that you are enunciating or talking in a way that they can understand. If the connection is not good, or if you have to say, is it okay if I make an appointment and we talk and then you set the day and the time, and then you go from there. Next page, Jeff, on this continuation of these skills. The presentation. pretty much what we're doing now. And like I just mentioned, telephone. That's only because before I did this, when I wrote it here, and as I was doing it just a second ago, and I wait a minute. What if I'm telling somebody about a telephone skill, and then you're saying to yourself, he obviously doesn't know the audience. Remember, this particular presentation that we're viewing was made here in the States, and so I would rather on the side of caution and say yes, everybody's got a telephone, everybody's got this and that, rather than go on the site and say, well, they don't understand this part about know the audience as we're going through the phone part. So make sure that they know that I'm not trying to be rude to them and their situation. It's one that I need to make sure that I have both sympathy and empathy if I've erred, but I'd rather err on the side of knowing that at least I'm sharing what the presentation is saying here. And so please, ma'am, and please, sir, make those adjustments on your notes because you know what your specific situation is as to how you're working it, and it may be a little bit different than the way what I would work it here. And then also there's the listening skill. So I have the listening, and then there's two more. There's the writing. Go ahead, Jeff, to the next page. Yeah, the writing, and then the electronic messaging. If you're going to send notes home or send out written communication, please make sure that the grammar and the spelling and all those things are correct, because there's nothing worse than for an educator to send out information and nobody has proofread that information, and they're all kind of errors. And so you want to make sure that what you're doing as you write that letter, that you have somebody to go back and check you. My wife, during our years that we worked, neither one of us never ever sent a letter out without having the other to proof it. And you can become pretty good at being able to proof somebody else's stuff, because it's easier to find somebody else's mistakes other than find your own. And then finally, on this particular session, it talks about the electronic messaging. And again, on that, they say it's important that we include on the message line what the topic is or the subject line is. And then it says avoid unnecessary attachments. And then again, finally there, use common sense. Consider what it would be like to receive the message. Just review it and say to yourself, how does this look? What is it trying to say? And is it saying what I want it to say? Next, pay attention to the nonverbal signals, and then also maintain good eye contact. And then the one just before it says, consider your tone of voice when speaking. Try to keep that level speaking voice, again, being slow and not fast, or fast, not, sometimes you have to speed it up just a little bit, but then you can always make sure that you're able to back it down so that people can basically understand each and every word that you're saying. Again, because of the way I grew up, and that's not an excuse, and that's why I have to practice, because I grew up talking extremely fast, probably 80, 90 words a minute, and now I'm trying to get it down to where it's maybe 35 to 40 words a minute. But that 80 to 85 words a minute really used to mess me up, because people would say, well, what did you say? Whole nother conversation. Next section there, Jeffrey, please. Common ground, that's right, that's the last one on this thing. I didn't look down again. Is when you go through, and by the time you get to where you feel like, okay, maybe I've mastered this trade, then always remember that coaching football, one of the things that you're going to discover every year, you're going to go back to the basics every single year. You start out with your blocking and your tackling drills. Well, in being able to communicate once a month or every 2 weeks or whatever you feel is necessary for you to master the skill, you're going to have to go back and say, okay, let's take another look at what this sounds like. What do I look like? Am I putting myself in a position to where the audience really understands what I'm trying to say? And so the only way you can do that is to find that common ground by reviewing your material over and over again so that you know the material that you're working with. Now, when you're working with somebody else's material, it's even more important that you review that material because you may or may not agree with everything that's there, but you want to make sure that as the individuals are taking their notes, that they know that okay, no, he didn't write it, but he's at least trying to explain it from his viewpoint or her viewpoint, so that I might be able to comprehend it better. That's my whole focus as I go through this, is to be able to say it in such a way and encourage you to not give up as you go through the process. You're going to get frustrated because this particular session here deals with situations that are real when you get into this profession of coaching or refereeing, because you will be dealing with people, and sometimes people aren't nice, as you'll see as we go through this. Go to that. Um, I believe it's 10 takeaways that you'll see, and they'll be divided in 1 through 5, and then 5 through 10 will be on the last one as well. The 10 takeaways are there in front of us. It's the 10 takeaways of being an effective communicator, and it just says knows that everything he says or does can be considered a form of communication. On that one, it took me back early today that I remember once during a basketball game, a reporter came up to me and basically said to me, Hall, I don't know if he called me Hall or Jesse, he said, but I think you had a horrible game tonight. Do you have any comment? I simply looked at the reporter and I didn't open my mouth. He said, well, did you hear what I said? I still didn't open my mouth. Because see, what what we have to understand is that if we're mad or angry or just upset over a comment that somebody made about something that we just did, I mean, I went out, I gave the best I had. I don't remember whether it was one of my best games or one of my worst games or anything in between. But just his initial comment to me got me so upset. And then I said, don't embarrass myself, don't embarrass my family, and do not embarrass the league that I'm working for. So I had nothing to say. And he walked out, and then somebody asked him, I heard him once he got on the other side of the door, well, what did he say to you? He said he did not say one simple word. And they said, well, can we write no comment? And he told them no, because he didn't comment. And I'm just simply saying all of that to just say, make sure that you understand that anything that comes out of your mouth, once it comes out, there's absolutely no way that I've discovered that we can pull it back and perhaps take it back. Let me just move on here. Proficient at a variety of communication channels and strives to find the best match for each situation. An effective communicator understands that all communication is open to interpretation and can be viewed in a totally different way than it was intended. Humility is a powerful and often underutilized tool. And then 4, because 5 is also on the next page, an effective communicator finds his own voice and he is genuine in his communication efforts. Go ahead, Jeffrey, because number 5 is on the next page as well, 5 through 10. Okay, there you see, communicator works at enhancing his or her communication skills, is aware of the circumstances and what the underlying message really is, and that's kind of where we are right now. My message is that you will develop your own technique and habits that will fit you, but it will take time. And that's one of the things that what you've heard me talk about when I was young, how wild and how untrained I was at that point. But you have to learn from those errors or those mistakes that you make so that you don't keep making the same ones over and over again. Is again, number 7 is aware of the fact that showing is communicated can often be more important than what is actually communicated. You've heard me say it over and over again. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Number 8, listens with his eyes and heart as well as his ears. Be a good listener, um, and actually hear what people have to say. Um, there's nothing more, I think, disgrunting or disappointing to individuals than to not feel as though they're being listened to. So just be a great listener as you go through this process. Number 9 says what you mean and mean what you say. Your no's have to be no, and you know, you don't always have to explain no. Um, as a parent, I can remember there were times when my children would say to me, well, why do I have to do that? And I had one simple word that I would just say, and that was because they knew what the rest of it was. Now, I know that's kind of cold when you think about it from the standpoint of, well, wait a minute, you just said you have to watch what you say. Again, if you know the individuals that you're talking to, you've trained these kids in such a way that they know what's expected. And so when you tell them that that's what they need to do, and then they say, well, why? And you to me, you can get to that point of saying because you've actually covered that over and over again. Now, if they don't understand, that's a totally different situation. But make sure that as you go through this, you say what you mean, but you also mean what you say. And finally, on this particular session, as we get ready to go to the next section here, it says an effective communicator realizes that once communication is out there, it can't be taken back. Silence cannot be quoted. And that's the thing that I want you to remember. Because once it comes out, then you cannot take it back. Go to chapter 11. No, I'm sorry, 13. Yes, handling adversity. This one, and I didn't start this one until this morning. Some of that, well, most of chapter 12 I did last night, but chapter 12, when I got up, and I'm really glad that I didn't try to handle this one last night because I was getting a little tired, because there is just so much here, and I want to make sure that I help you in this area, because it's one that I dealt with for many years in my work environment of actually trying to help others resolve or solve their problems. I will tell you from the very beginning, when it comes to situations, I don't try and teach young people what's called anger management. I try and teach them what I call anger resolution, and I'll get into that in just a bit. But here's a saying by Disraeli, the British author and politician. He says, there is no education like adversity. Because that's the thing that you want to remember here. You have to learn from the mistakes that you make. Go ahead and turn it to the next one, Jeffrey. In the very first section there, the thing that I took away from that is, how do or will you handle challenges and difficulties when faced with them? How are you going to do it? You start out with a plan. And your plan, you have to say to yourself, if it's not this, then it has to be that. And then you have to be in total control of that situation once that adversity hits. And you'll see that more and more as we get toward the end of this particular chapter. And so I won't go into great details here. But yeah, the big thing there is, how will you deal with it when it first comes out? And then you turn, in the second one, the second point there, you will turn that negative situation into a positive situation. Just because somebody is criticizing the way that you may have done something or said something that they did not agree with or like, take that, what could be a constructive criticism, and not necessarily a negative uh, criticism, but make it a positive one. And then you'll discover, at least that's what I discovered over the years, was that the sooner I made that negative situation into a positive situation, it began to cool things off a lot faster than me doing it the other way over the course of the years that I was working with young people. And then finally, I'll just say stay positive and stay calm. Go to that next diagram, Jeff, on the next page, on 13.1, I believe it is. There it is. Types of adversity: physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, and financial. On this next page, you're going to see a definition. No, it's going to talk about 6 types of adversity, and I think it comes back to this in just a little bit. So, Jeff, go to the next one. It's called 6 types of adversity. Coping skills. Yep. Okay. All right. Go back one because I missed something here. Let me just make sure I didn't mess this up. Go back one, Jeffrey. Hold on. 13. Keep going down because I saw it. Go down another one. 6 types. His actions, his emotions. Okay, yeah. All they're doing there is just defining those actions and their emotions. Go ahead. Keep going. You were right. Tactics for coping with adversity. Everyone's life is a never-ending series of different and sometimes challenging experiences. A variety of strategies and tactics can be employed to deal with those adverse situations effectively, including the following. Now, it gives you some pointers here, and I don't want to read. No, you know what? I did write down. Go ahead and read these so that it will give us either questions or a point of discussion. Understand that adversity is inevitable in life. Difficulties are a part of life. To avoid or resist this reality will only make the coach's predicament persist. Man, you got to be willing to deal with it because it's all a part of what you do. When you get into this profession, you are going to have those problem moments, and it's that adversity that separates the good from the bad. View adversity as a learning opportunity rather than punishment. In reality, bad things sometimes happen to good people and vice versa. The key for a coach is to neither give in or give up when faced with adversity. Instead, he should focus on what he can influence and accept those things that are beyond his control. Next bullet point: develop his internal skill set. A coach should prepare himself mentally for confronting adversity head on. In that regard, he should work on enhancing his level of emotional strength, courage, and self-discipline. Again, don't just get upset. Just remember, stay cool, stay calm, and then move on. Develop his internal resources when things go badly. Everyone, including the coach, needs encouragement and support, someone to help ease the burden. In that regard, a concerted effort should be undertaken to build a support system of family, friends, and colleagues. I have friends that I call on all the time. I have, now that I've gotten a lot older, some of my mentors have moved on. But I do have colleagues and friends that I can call. And, and I've shared this. My crew chief on the football crew that I work with is a guy that I've known for 30 years. And I taught him way back when he was 16 years of age. We've maintained a friendship. And as a matter of fact, when he graduated high school, he was 18 years old. And 3 months after he graduated high school, his dad was killed. And so he basically adopted me as his mentor and in a lot of ways, his dad. And so I say that only to say this. There are times on a football field when he will say to me, listen, you might be the dad, but I'm the crew chief. And right now, this is the crew chief talking, and you need to listen. You go, oh, okay. And you're right, because there are times that I do misplace the relationship that we have because I'm always thinking, well, I'm your mentor and in some cases your dad, but when we go on the football field, he really is the boss and not me. Because I've walked up to him at times and said, well, you need to do this. And he'll look at me and say, you know what? The guy that taught me didn't teach me that way. And so I have to be quiet. Avoid surrounding himself with negative people. As a rule, individuals tend to conform to the people who are around them. All factors considered, a coach who is surrounded by pessimistic individuals tend to be less prepared to deal with life challenges. And then finally, invest in yourself. A coach facing adversity should take charge of his life. There's no better way to do that than to make positive lifestyle changes. This includes eating habits and getting enough rest or sleep, as is listed there. So don't misunderstand me. You've got to be ready for whatever comes your way. And the best thing to do is to make sure, to me, the most important one on there, because I know that once I get tired, I become very irritable. And so for me, now that I'm as old as I am, it's that last statement in there that really hits home for me. And it says, this includes eating healthy and getting enough sleep. There are days that because I'm out and away from home, I do not eat the way I'm supposed to eat because I love what's called junk food. And there are times when I get home late and I don't get enough rest and I have things that I need to do the very next day. And then when I have to go in and deal with situations, I'm not the person that I really want to be. So I have to make sure that I take care of that last one more so than I do any others in order to be effective and able to deal with what I call sometimes somebody else's problems that are now my problems. And so that one to me is very key. Go ahead, Jeff, and go over to the next one. I think that's when I should get to there it is, the 5 B's. Thank you for working with me. These are the 5 B's, and it says be calm, things that we've already said before. Be vigilant, be responsive, not reactive. Don't allow somebody to, push the wrong button with you so that you get all bent out of shape. Be results oriented. In other words, if the solution has been met that you thought should have been met, but it was met a lot quicker or faster than you thought, guess what? Move on, because you should learn from each and every situation as to when that situation is at least in the healing process. Don't leave it worse than what it was when it came to you. Your position in this is to at least get it to where there's a neutral ground. It's okay for you not to like that individual or that individual not to like you, but on this football team, everybody's going to respect everybody else. Next one, dealing with the 3 stages, Jeffrey. Next page. The 3 stages of dealing with the on-the-field adversity. And I'll just skip all the way down to number 1. The adversity, a team loses a game in the last few seconds or in the waning seconds. A player is injured. A game-changing penalty is incorrectly called. Great scenario here, because these are the kind of things that really, really put the pressure on players, coaches, fans, administrators, officials, sometimes the security staff, whether it be police or security individuals hired outside of the police department. But here's the thing that you have to remember. The head coach does what he needs to help everyone deal with the situation, particularly with regard to keeping things in the right perspective. And here's the most important piece that I deal with when I'm out officiating my football games. There are times when coaches will get a little heated And I always tell head coaches, I'm not going to talk to your assistants. They're your responsibility. They're not mine because I'm coming directly to you. So when an assistant coach starts to say things that I know that he or she should not say, I'll turn to them and say, you know what? You need to talk to your head coach. But right now, I'm talking to him, and I'm going to deal only with him because there's 6, 7, 8 of you guys or staff over here. I don't want to hear 8 different people talking to me at the same time. So I'm only listening to the head coach. The rest of y'all need to be quiet. And I'll say to the head coach, Coach, at this point, I need for you to tell them they need to be quiet. Because if they keep running their mouth, it's going to cost you and your team 15 yards. And it doesn't take them very long to at least get that point on. So I see Jeff is going ahead, which is what I need to do. Go to the next one, Jeff. The 5 B's right here, the stages. And so I let them understand and know that, I understand the situation that you guys are in, but head coach, understand this piece right here. And that piece is your player is injured. As game officials, we don't control injuries. We don't control injuries. So it's sad that the young person is injured, but that's something that we all have to deal with. Let's just get the best medical attention that we can for this person so that it's not a season-ending injury or it's not life-threatening and all those kind of scenarios. So just deal with it, Coach. Let's move on. And if you feel, yes, we all make mistakes. Your team has fumbled the ball 3 times tonight. You've thrown 2 interceptions, but yet you're going to say one incorrect call cost you the ball game? For real? Let's find a happy ground here. And that happy ground is that we all must understand this thing has gotten to a point to where we are at a point to where people are getting totally out of hand. It is our responsibility to allow cooler heads to prevail in this situation. And we move on. Second one, it says this stage is often referred to as the blame stage, which is kind of what I just covered there. And then the last one says it's a channeling where everyone's emotion in a positive manner and overcoming the obstacles that are in the path of the team. When reality finally sets back in, as you look at these different stages, there are times we'll come out of the locker room 30 minutes later after we've had our team meeting and all that good stuff, and we'll run into the assistant coaches or coaches and sometimes even the teams, and the following will be said. We're sorry about the emotions that we showed when we were on the football field, but we've had an opportunity to sit and listen to what actually took place, and we've had a chance to look at the stats, and the statistics tell us you guys didn't beat us. We beat ourselves. And so please, and that happens. And we've had to do it the other way to where we'll go back in and we'll catch the head coach or the assistant coaches and say, hey, coach, we've had a chance to talk about the situation, and you were right. That was totally the wrong call to make at that particular time. It had nothing to do with safety, didn't have anything to do with the play. We could have let that play go. And we do apologize for doing that, but it's just a learning stage, and that's kind of what the whole purpose of that one is. So go to that finally. No, there's a couple more there. Go ahead and turn the page for me, please. Overcoming the hurdles that life often puts in the way of both coaches and players. There has to be flexibility, persistence, mental toughness, perspective, and then sense of reality. Next page, please. One of the most common denominators of successful coaches is that they are able to effectively overcome adversity. The ride to success is a roller coaster with ups and downs, highs and lows, and that will just help mess up the football coaches and the staff. It is certainly a reality of the football coaches world. Basically, the things that have been written right there in front of us. If you need that to stay there, let it stay there just for a minute so they can get that down. Next page, please. The 10 takeaways, and again, it's 1 through 5 and 6 through 10. The coach who wants to deal with adversity effectively realizes that it is critical that his team is able to handle difficulties and troublesome situations that arise. That's something that you have to teach your kids. The other two, three, 4, and 5, I've covered those 4 already, Jeff. So go to 6 through 10. The coach who wants to deal with adversity effectively is cognizant of the fact that sometimes he needs to adjust how he sees and thinks about matters. The coach who wants to deal with adversity effectively knows that when he accepts the difficulties of life, life tends to become less difficult. Again, number 8, adversity effectively takes inspiration and learns from other individuals who have successfully dealt with their trials and tribulations. 9, the coach who wants to deal with adversity effectively is armed with courage, self-discipline, and resilience. And then finally, in chapter 13, the coach who wants to deal with adversity effectively is conscious of the fact that how he approaches meddlesome situations is a choice that he can choose to make. And we hope that that coach understands and knows that it's his responsibility to accept total responsibility for whatever might happen as he goes through that particular process. Go ahead and turn, Jeff, to chapter 14. And now this one is going from adversity to dealing with the conflict. I really like this particular quote that's on the board there. It talks about a guy who only has a hammer, but then he treats everything in life as if it were a nail. And I thought, boy, that's an awful deep statement, and I think you'll see why that is so appropriate for the section that we're going into right now, and that's actually dealing with the conflict itself. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and turn that to next page, that next section, which I'm going to read. All right, football can be well, no, that's not the one I wanted. Go to the next one, Jeff, because it'll cover more of what I want to deal with. So go to the next page where it says conflict versus confrontation. That one. That's the one I wanted to get to. The conflict piece here, and again, I'm just going to read the first paragraph and then I'll kind of give you my own interpretation of what else is there, except for I'll go over to the confrontation part also. But a lot of people associate conflict with fighting, arguing, yelling, or someone getting mad. Conflict, however, doesn't have to encompass any of those things. In reality, individuals tend to experience far less conflict than they imagine. What occurs more frequently are misunderstandings and differences of opinion. They actually confuse the conflict with those items that we've already discussed up there. However, let's look at confrontation. Confrontation, on the other hand, is the process by which conflict is resolved. And that's where we're headed now here in this last segment of today's session. Let's look at some ways that we can actually deal with how conflict. So go to that next page, Jeff, because there's going to be more of that same kind of information on the next page. So again, that's just the conclusion of what we're going to cover here as we go through this diagram 14.1, the model triangle. And as we see it, I think it'll be a lot easier for us to jump in and say, oh yeah, that's all it really is. And so go ahead, Jeff, to that diagram 14.1, which should be the next. There we go. This one is kind of narrow-minded in a sense that it only shows 2 individuals. But then it comes and it looks like there's only one issue. And there may be 6 or 7, where that big exclamation point is, there may be 7 different things that's in that top portion of that triangle. It's important for, and see that where it says the model for healthy confrontation? You have to figure out what is the issue in this particular situation that is going to help you to resolve whatever your problem may be. So go over, Jeff, and in there you're going to see here that there are 3 basic things, I believe, that they talk about when they get to this, that from from that model. It says the coach may feel that someone is really mad at him or her, or he is involved in a major disagreement. Well, but then when you sit down and then you actually go through that whole process, you discover that's not it at all. So go down, Jeff, to the next session there. Things get out of hand sometimes because we let them continue to multiply, or things are just added on to them and then nothing's done. And so now you're in multiple steps of just not being able to get a good handle on, what's happening. So we want to make sure that this process is dealt with. And so we don't want to just leave it hanging out there and say, well, it's going to work its way out, because it usually doesn't. And so we want to make sure that we have a plan already into place as to how we see this. And this is kind of when the overall goals of how we get to resolving the situation kind of shifts. A lot of times going back to conflict or conflict resolution. And it is interesting to me because that's what most people teach. They teach how to help resolve the conflict, but then they want to try and manage it on the other side when it's anger management. And that's why I said for me, it's a thing of anger resolution will help me get to conflict resolution. And I think you'll be able to see this as we get toward the end of this and go through all the different factors that are actually there. So Jeff, go to the next one. And again, for you young folks or individuals that's actually trying to write all of this stuff, it will be put on the Facebook page, and you'll be able to just get it in greater detail, because we want to make sure that you can kind of get the whole gist of everything that is being presented here. Resolution styles. Go to the next one, Jeff, on table 14.1. All right. And I'm going to read these to you, but on the next page, you're going to actually see, and I'll have to read those, but these are I think it's 8 of them, childhood lessons, bargain, avoidance, band-aid, right fighter, role player, red herring, and embrace. These are the 8 examples of the more common approaches to dealing with conflict. You can name them anything you want, but that's the names that the writer here has chosen to use. These aren't the way that I learned them back when I learned them, but that's okay. Go to the next page. That'll start us on that way. Childhood lessons. An individual copies the conflict resolution style in his relation to his environment, particularly his observations of what the adults around him did when he or she was growing up. We used to call those copycats. Bargain. This style of conflict resolution treats the situation more like deal making than reaching a mutual agreement. In this approach, the common disagreement is used as currency for the future. For instance, someone will agree to make a concession now in return for a favor in the future. I'll comment on each one of these, as a group in a bit. Avoidance. The hope is that by ignoring the problem, it will somehow magically go away. While it does, on occasion, in the majority of cases, avoiding conflict only delays it, or in my opinion, makes it worse. The Band-Aid. You just had major surgery and somebody's going to just throw a Band-Aid on it and expect it to work. it won't there, and it won't end conflict resolution either. The Band-Aid approach, this approach treats every conflict like a crisis by patching up things quickly in order to escape uncomfortable feelings. This style induces a temporary solution that may work in the moment. It does not, however, address long term issues. And in the red herring style is when an individual approaches conflict resolution with a competitive versus a corporate mindset. If he reaches a point where he thinks he is losing the original argument, he states an irrelevant remark in an attempt to distract the other person from the original topic. And we'll get definitely into that one in just a bit here too. The role player. Role players attempt to assert power over the situation by announcing their title or position. As such, they rely on putting rank rather than attempting to work through the relevant issues. This one is directed, in my opinion, more toward the adults with children or team leaders with football teams. In other words, I'm the captain, so I'm right and you're wrong. No, don't allow yourself or allow people around you to actually take it to that level. Wrong is wrong and right is right. Later on, they're going to be talking about whether it's fair or not. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think there are a whole lot of things in life that's fair. But I can tell you this, some of it's right and some of it's wrong. But fair, I don't even know what that is. Finally here, embrace. Individuals who embrace conflict don't interpret it as something bad or potentially as the end of the relationship. Rather, they expect it and assumed it can be resolved. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and turn as we're closing in on. All right, preparing to succeed. Here, and I'm telling you, the first one, gather the facts. If you don't have some facts going in, trying to get to the point of successful conflict resolution, then you've just lost the whole battle. And so that's why I started with number one, but I'm going to go up and just share exactly what it says. Successful conflict resolution involves a coach spending 90% of his time preparing and just 10% of his time actually resolving it. The better the prep, the easier it is to rectify the situation. The coach's preparation or efforts should encompass a number of steps, including the following. Get the facts, know the alternatives, know his weaknesses, know his authority, know his expectations, know the other side, talk face to face, schedule. Let me move this over just a little bit here, out of the way. Schedule and take time to succeed, control the environment, set a timeline, treat the other person with respect, be optimistic about reaching a solution, and strive for, that's where it is there on this last one, strive for what's called a fair outcome. Again, I don't think there really is a quote unquote fair outcome, but we can get to one that is either right for that particular situation. That's their take on it. Let's go to the next one and I'll throw my comments in there. Framework for action. All right, go to that next one, Jeff, because I think we're getting to the point to where there's a chart. There we go. 10 takeaways for dealing with conflict. This will cover everything that was on those particular pages as we go through these 10. And again, this one will go 1 through 5, and then it'll show us 6 through 10. The coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively understands the importance of addressing conflict as expeditiously as possible in a responsible manner. The coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively sets an example of exhibiting high personal and professional standards with regard to handling differences of opinion. The coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively promotes clear communication and initiates crucial conversation when appropriate. There are times when you have young people or other coaches uh, resolving their situation. You can sit back and allow them to do just that. It's when the situation gets almost totally out of hand, or it may have gotten to that point as a head coach, or even as a coach, it's your responsibility to deal with it. But going back to the things that have been written and said so far, it is important that we understand and know that if we have the great communication and the things that we need to be in place as we go through this process, some of these things can be dealt with. One of the things that I had to do when I was athletic director was that I had to sit down and actually write a a guideline or a book with guidelines for my coaches and for the parents and for the potential student athletes. One that had to be approved by my administrators and our district athletic director and all the people that were above me. And they said, "Why did you take that much time to go through this process?" And I said, "I wanted something that I could open up and say to people, you know what, before this season started, this is what we all went over, we all agreed to it, and now we're at this particular point. Now let's take a look and see what it actually says here and whether or not," because we all had to sign off on the fact that we had gone through it so that they couldn't come back and say, "Well, I never saw this before." And I'm telling you, parents, from my experience, were great at coming back and say, "Well, I don't remember that." Then you go back and then you check your notes, because all parents were invited to at least 3 different sessions that we wanted them to come to so that we could go over different such things as how does a player get playing time, what the expectations were for practice, what the expectations were for your students. No, not just expectations, but how were the student athletes going to get home after school, when we would feed the kids, and all of those kinds of things were answered during that particular session. And so if a parent said, well, they didn't remember it, I'd go back to my files and I'd look up that parent's name, and I'm here to tell you 99% of the time that parent didn't even show to either one of the 3 sessions, with several repeated phone calls after that. But then when they saw something as a problem, then they wanted to come in and say, well, I didn't know. Well, that's not necessarily the coach's fault, and I sure wasn't going to take blame for something that we made a minimum of 3 efforts to get you to come in and sit with us, but probably 5 or 6. And so that part we took care before that season even started. And then number 5, the coach who wants to deal with the conflict effectively is aware of the fact that respectful debate and constructive considered criticism can be healthy. Take the criticism from the parent that might have a legitimate point as to whatever they're saying, but understand that we have to at least listen to what they have to say before we jump to the conclusion and say, well, you just didn't come, so that's not my problem. But it is a problem. It truly is a problem, because they're concerned about the playing or the lack of playing for their son or their daughter in a particular sport. And the first place that our principal would tell them to start was with me as the athletic director. And so I had to deal with it first, because he would make them go through protocol. And I would just make sure with the coach that he had not talked to the parent and given them anything other than the fact that you need to go through this proper chain. Because what I didn't want to happen was the coach say one thing and they come around the other door, come in and say, I need to talk to you, knowing that they just talked to the head coach, and rather than go through protocol, in some instances, they would just take it upon themselves, or assistants would do it. And again, pull the assistant coach in and say, we do have protocol around here. There's a chain of command that we all, I don't like going to the principal or to the vice principal that's in charge of me as the athletic director. I don't always like that, because I know that sometimes they don't want to hear what I have to say, but they do, because that's my first step through the chain. I can't go into the principal's office, generally speaking, and just say, we need to talk. He's going to say, have you talked to, and if my answer is no, he'll just say, close my door on your way out. So there is a system that should be in place before you get to some of these conflicts. Go ahead, Jeff, and we'll cover 6 through 10, and then we'll open it up for questions. The coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively knows that conflicts trigger strong emotions and will fester if they're ignored. The coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively demands that his staff and players treat each other in a respectful manner at all times. Demands that. Not ask that they do it, but that has to be a demand made by the coach himself, head coach. The coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively accepts the fact that if two people can't come to agreement, it may be time for them to disengage and move on. We're not going to bet 100% in being able to get two people to see things in the exact same way, whether it be a coach and a parent or just two players. They have a right to feel the way that they feel, but they will respect each other if they expect to be a part of your program. The coach who wants to deal with conflicts effectively has both the ability to thoughtfully address each situation involving disagreement and the capacity to implement a strategy for resolving it. Finally, the coach who wants to deal with conflict effectively learns from his experiences with regard to handling that particular situation. At this point, I believe that's the very last of the 40 slides that we went through. And if you guys have any questions, oh yeah, I see there's some stuff over here in chat that I need to go check. Okay. Let me take a look. Hold on as I look through this. Networks. Oh, wow. When I did go up, I thought, okay. I don't see any questions on the chat unless I missed some earlier. So Coach Jeff or Coach Lawrence, if there are not any questions at this time, maybe if you guys take it, maybe somebody has a question that I might be able to answer. Even if it means you didn't understand anything, I won't get mad at you if you tell me that. I hope you don't. I hope I've done it in such a way that it was a lot smoother today for us to do it the way that we did it by having me get together with Jeffrey and Coach Lawrence and go through the 40 points before we got to the vast majority of the individuals actually online with us today. Thanks to each and every one of you for allowing me to take a portion of your evening for you guys, but it's still afternoon here in Kansas City, and it's a beautiful day. Again, thank you. Back to either Coach Lawrence or Coach Jeffrey.
All right, thank you, Jesse. We really appreciate your facilitation on today. As we went through the PowerPoints, I'd like to open this floor up to any questions. Coach Lawrence, are there any points that you would like for Jesse to go over, or any points that you felt need more elaboration? I'd like to open that floor to you or to anyone else who may have that question. So, Coach Lawrence, is there any points that you would like Jesse to elaborate more on?
Okay, thank you. I want to say thank you to Coach Jesse, who was a great job you did there. I think what I would just say is anyone in the floor or anyone in the house that may have a question, because I think if we have time, we can unmute the mics for anyone who probably would like to say something, because I think it will be better at this point, since we're already running up, and that is only if we have time. If we have time, I suggest we can unmute mic for anyone who has a question. So instead of typing in your question, you can just say something. Otherwise, we're good.
I would say if there is anyone with any questions, can you please, for us to coordinate that, can you please just click the raise hand icon, and we can go and we can unmute your mic and we can have you answer the question, have you ask your question. So if there's anyone with a question, please use the raise hand icon, and happy to um, we'll be happy to yield the floor to you for your question. So the floor is open for any questions. Anyone?
Okay, while we're waiting for anyone to raise their hands so we can unmute the mic, I would just quickly say again, for those who didn't join us on time today. So the plan now is to see that we round up coaching next week and then take on refing as a referee. I think Jesse Hall would say something about that, how it's going to go, what it's about. But that's the plan. Then also for the for the session yesterday and today, we'll get a video onto you by morning so you can replay the video, and it's after you have the video for at least 24 hours, then we can send in the surveys for the both sessions, because we want you to have the materials first and before you answer the surveys, so that you are able to answer the surveys correctly as much as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach Lawrence. Yes. So, are there any questions? We have some time remaining, and we want to make sure that we answer anything that needs clarity. From Royalty Sports, we can actually allow you to ask this question. So, um, please unmute your mic, and can you unmute your mic? Okay. See if he's well. We can ask this question until he unmutes his mic. If a player is injured and fails to report it to the coach or any staff, but the coach later gets to know about it during the game, can a coach sit the player on the bench until he is cleared, or let the player play on? So I think Jesse's asking a question in regards to, like, what if a coach um, is made aware that a player is injured later in the game? What decision should he make? And is he allowed to make whatever decision, or if they are allowed to make whatever decision they decide on?
Good question. Here's a situation that we always dealt with. We made sure that we said being hurt just simply means it's something that I can probably cover up with the band-aid. I have a little scrape on my finger, or my fingernail got kind of sort of clipped, and we can just clip it off, and then there's no more. I mean, and we can just tape it up and say it's all good and healthy. So, but if a kid comes over and his finger is dislocated, that now becomes an injury. And once we get to the point of an injury, as a coaching staff, it is highly recommended that if you have injuries, dislocated finger, or a kid says, Coach, I'm not sure, but I'm a little on the dizzy side. And then you say, well, what happened? And he said, well, on that play when I made that tackle 3 plays ago, I used my helmet, or I hit him with I got hit in the side of the head, and things just don't look right. That is now considered an injury, and in my opinion, and probably, I know here in the States, if you want to make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble, and once the word injury comes up, player comes out. And they do not go back into the ball game, not just on the head coach's word. It has to be cleared by somebody. And this is what Coach Jeff and um, Coach Lawrence and I talked about just before we came on air today. That that there needs to be uh, medical people involved in sending injured players back into a ball game. Why? Because of the legal part of it that none of us want to get involved in. As an official, you know, now first of all, as an official, I can tell you this: I cannot overrule the fact of a coach saying, "Well, he's just going to play." I can say, "Coach, it's my recommendation that you don't play him." However, if that player falls to his knees and he goes out of the ball game, at that point, the officiating staff can come together and say, "You know what? It's not safe for that player. That player doesn't know where he or she is in this game. Hey, coach, you might want to take this individual out of this ball game and find somebody." I, I mean, other than the mama just saying, "Well, just put her back out there, or put him back out there." You might find somebody from the medical side that says this kid can play, because if they don't, and you wind up in court, the last thing you want to happen to you is for your name to be mentioned as this process gets to the court system, especially in this country. I don't know what it's like in your country, but that's the last place you want to go. Because if you go there, then you might be held liable or responsible for some of the damage. And when the lawsuit comes down the pipe, your name will be in that lawsuit. So you may have to get a second or third job just to support or take care of whatever happened on a sports field. So injury, please, please take them out.
Okay, thank you so much, Jesse. We have another question from Sunday Ajayi. I hope I didn't mispronounce your name. I'm sorry if I have, but we're going to ask you to unmute your mic so you can ask it. Please unmute your mic.
Good evening.
How you
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Nice session tonight. I really enjoyed today's session.
Thank
I wanted to ask, as a manager, as a coach, if your best player puts up an act of indiscipline before and during training sessions, what can you do to manage such a player? And it's been a reoccurring thing. He's fond of doing that. You've called him, you've advised him, but he keeps on doing that. What can you do as a coach?
Okay, Coach. I'm going to try to answer that in a positive way, saying that again, that decision goes back to the head coach. However, let me just say this to clarify what I'm trying to say. Think of it this way: if a player had you in front of your team and he said something to you that's totally disrespectful, and you allow him to go into the ball game, in my opinion, you just open up the gate for every student athlete on your team to do the exact same thing. Because all the kids will say is that, well, you let Jimmy go back in the game and play, and he told you exactly as to what he thought about you and your coaching abilities, and all I did was laugh when he said it, and now you want to throw me off the team. So my situation coming back to you is can you be happy with yourself by allowing your best player to totally disrespect team rules? Now, if you're talking about somebody coming to practice 3 minutes late and he's your best player, well, there may be a reason as to why your best player is 3 minutes late. Maybe a teacher kept him out, or maybe his mom or dad couldn't get him there. But you know what? If the rules say that there will be punishment and the final decision is still up to yours, and let's say you said, well, if you come to practice late, you run 2 laps. Let's just say that's kind of a general thing. Well, if the guy says, Coach, it wasn't my fault. Hey, look, you're going to give me at least one of these laps. And on the second lap, I'll run with you to let the team know, because they're going to see him run the first one. And they're going to say, oh, coach run the second lap with him. Yeah, because I'm going to tell him, look, man, you are the leader on this team. So you have to make sure, and trust me, over the years, I run a lot of laps. And I wasn't the head coach, but I'd say to my guys, listen, we going down to this thing together. You want me to go talk to the head coach for you, then you have to take his punishment. Do I like the punishment? No comment. The punishment is what it is, and we're going to move on. So you going to run laps for me? Absolutely not. I'll run them with you because I needed to be in shape too. I mean, there was points in my life where I had a gut, and I mean, I looked like a clown with my big stomach, and so I did it as a matter of conditioning, for just for me. And no, I didn't just do it for my best players. There were other players that I would go out and run with. If a kid had a bad day in school and I knew it, and they were on punishment for something and they had to run, I'd go down there and run with them. Just because I knew I needed to run more, and I sure wasn't going to go out and run by myself. And after the drive home, I may have stopped and had another round of junk food that I didn't need, so I wouldn't do it then. So that was a great time for me to do what I needed to do to show players that I was, in support of them. So it's a tough question, and each situation is going to be reviewed regardless of what you say or do by your entire team, including the assistant coaches.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Sunday. We have another question from Onitolo Aladayo. I, unmute your mic, please. Please feel free to unmute your mic. We want you to ask this question in person, if you don't mind. Anatola, are you there? Okay. Well, their question is, their question, Jesse, is how do we stop the blame game among players, especially if the team loses?
Again, going back to the earlier practice sessions, we win as a team, we lose as a team. That has to be stressed after almost every practice so that the kids understand and know we're not going to accept the fact that you're saying, well, you didn't catch the ball, quarterback talking to the receiver. If you had caught that ball, we could have won the game, or vice versa. Had you thrown the ball better, we would have had a touchdown. The blame game is something that as coaches you establish early on in the game. Take on your individual responsibility and make sure that before you make that statement, you played a perfect game. Everything you did out on the field was perfect. Everything. And so don't accept it early on in practice. Even with exercises, somebody might say to, a teammate, you're out here loafing. And then you look over at them, or, you're not hustling. Let me put it to you that way. You're not hustling. And then you look at them and you go, wait a minute. This is the fastest kid that we have on the team. And we just ran sprints. And the fastest kid just finished third. Next time they go down, he finishes second. At that point, you stop it and you say, well, wait a minute. We have a problem. Because that's the fastest kid on your team. He may not be the best player, but he's the fastest kid on the team. You pull him off to the side and you say, look, for the last two sprints that we've done here as a team, you finished third and you finished second. I'm here to tell you that's not acceptable, because we know you are the fastest kid, and his comment to you might be, well, I still don't get to play. We're not talking playing time now. We're talking about team, and we're building a team, and this team is going to win together, and when we lose, we will lose together. Going at it half speed when we are doing it at full speed. There will be times on the practice field you'll tell kids we're walking through these drills, they have it. But when you're doing full drills at full speed, your kids need to understand and know that there will be consequences when you don't measure up to the standard. If a coach has in his repertoire toward his assistant coaches that the language or the way you talk to our students has to be a certain way, and that's violated, and you hear it or hear about it, then it will be the head coach's responsibility to address it. If an assistant coach, here's another assistant coach doing the exact same thing, they need to address that issue with their their other assistant coach, whether it be a good friend or somebody that y'all are just professional enough to where you can work together. But it has to be dealt with, and that way you'll get away from what I call the real name game, because it just gets totally out of hand the longer you let it go unattended.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Does anyone else has a question? Are there any other questions from anyone in this Zoom session?
I just quickly
Oh
would
yeah,
like to.
he wanted me to go over that the sessions. I'm sorry, Coach Lawrence. You did tell me there was another piece to that. On next week, we're gonna finish up the actual. No, wait a minute. We're gonna finish up the session through chapter 19 next weekend. We'll do two, maybe three next weekend, and then I'm sorry, on Saturday, and then on Sunday we will finish because there are 19 chapters, so we have five more chapters to do. So we will finish up that session. The following weekend, after we're done with the actual coaching part, all of you all that are interested in the officiating side, but because you're on the coaching side, it is my recommendation that you attend the rules session or the review of the rules and talk about the officiating side, because in the end there will be an exam for both coaches and officials. And so to get away and then not have an opportunity to be in on those sessions would almost be unfair to you. And I know that might sound like it's a bit much for the coaches, but it's kind of a general consensus. Almost, well, no, not almost, but in with USA football, the coaches are going to get more of what the officials do than what the officials get about what the coaches do. Now, again, the only reason that I went through the USA football side and did the coaching part was because I was going to do these sessions with you guys, and I didn't feel like, okay, I should be able to share with you. And by the way, I just finished that about 1 o'clock this morning, my time, because I said, well, I've got to do it in the morning. Tomorrow. So I need to have this done to say that I did it on this particular day. And all I'm saying to you guys is that there's still more to come, and just bear with us as we try to put this whole piece together. We do appreciate everything that you guys are doing by just giving up your time, especially your evening hours, family time, and all that other stuff. That's appreciated, and that's why we don't mind doing it for your organization. Thank you for allowing us to do that. Coach Lawrence, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Coach Jesse. I appreciate it. I just wanted to say thank you for handling the session today. The topics we had today, there was so much interesting topics that will go ahead and help everyone through their personal um, life, even outside football. So they're really, really interesting topics I saw on there. So I believe everyone has benefited from it because you can apply all of these things to your daily lives, and you see huge changes and huge upliftments in everything you do. So I would just say again that let us wait for the video tomorrow. First thing, you get the videos and then try to go through them, and then wait for the surveys, get the surveys and fill in, and then we're ready for the next weekend. That's all I wanted to say. And if anyone has questions, please always feel free to raise up your hand and get your mics ready. Um, like if you're using headset, make sure you have your headset plugged in. If you're not using headset, if you're using direct speakers, just anyone you feel comfortable with, just get it ready so that you can always, speak through your mics, your phone. Thank you all. Thank you for today. Thank you for your time. For Jeff, over to you.
No, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We really appreciate the commitment and dedication that you all have exhibited. So we're going to conclude tonight's session and we'll resume back on next week at 8 p.m. your time, Nigerian time. If you have any questions that wasn't quite answered today, please share with Coach Lawrence and we'll be sure to we'll be sure to answer those questions on that during next week's session. So if you have any questions, please send it to Coach Lawrence and we will answer it on next week. But with all that being said, thank you all for tonight. Remember that the information we shared is referenced in the USA Football Manual, and this is in preparation for your coaching certification. This will be recorded and put on YouTube. And so if you need to go back and reference it, once everything is complete, we'll have it right to you. But with all that being said, see you next week. Thank you once again. Bye.